So around about October and November every single year, there's always tons of new watch releases. I mean, we have new releases from Hamilton, Omega, Breguet, Zenith, Grand Seiko, and everything in between. And the reason for this is because they want to make a big bang before Christmas. They want to get eyes on them before Christmas. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at all these brand new releases, and we're saving some really exciting ones until the middle. So let's start with number one, and no, it's not the watch that you think that I would cover, which would be the Call of Duty new Hamilton khaki field. That's a little bit older, but more recently they released this. This is the brand new Hamilton Ventura Edge, and it's totally skeletonized. Now, the Ventura actually has a ton of history. It was Elvis's watch back in the day. It had a really unique case design, and it's always been a pretty divisive figure in the watch industry purely because of the way, I mean, it's kind of weird, right? But in a way, you've got to respect it. You've got to respect the fact that Hamilton hasn't changed the design. It hasn't conformed to society's norms. It's kept it very historically accurate. But in this model, they have introduced a new case structure. This looks very angular in design. It looks a little bit odd, if I'm totally honest, and it's still kind of triangular, I guess you could say, but it does take a step away from the older, normal, kind of run-of-the-mill designs that we're used to seeing from the Ventura. And actually, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the June watches that they released about a year ago. I'm not sure if you guys remember that. So this new watch comes in at 47 millimeters in diameter and 51 millimeters in length. It has a thickness of 13.8 millimeters, has a fully automatic movement in the caliber H10-S, and this has 80 hours of power. It's water resistant to 50 meters, of course, has sapphire crystal glass, and it is a fully skeletonized watch. Skeletonized just basically means you can see into the beating heart of your watch. And my first ever luxury watch was an Oris Artelaire skeleton watch that you could see into the heart of it, because I was obsessed with engines and components, and I think a lot of watch guys that get into the industry, that's kind of what their first obsession is. So I like the fact that you can see into this, but the price is the price. So the stainless steel version of this model comes in at £1,560, whereas the blackened version, which to me looks more like the June version that they released about a year ago, that comes in a little bit more expensive at £1,660. Now, I think this is going to be quite divisive because typically Hamilton watches sit around about the £600 to £900 mark. So to get something like this is quite expensive, but then I suppose it is totally skeletonized. I suppose it is a redesign. But what do you guys think? Is this quite expensive for a Hamilton? The next new watch I found is one from one of the most historically significant brands in the world. This is Breguet. And specifically, this is the Classique Phase de Lune 7235. Now, this is a limited edition, so please bear that in mind. This watch comes in at full 18 karat gold, comes in at 39 millimeters in diameter, a brilliant 9.9 millimeters in thickness. It's water resistant to 30 meters, and it does have quite a few complications. It has a small seconds, like you can see here, a power reserve, and it also has phases and age of the moon. But where this watch gets really incredible and really nerdy is the movement. So the movement in this model is the caliber 502.3.DRL. This has 250 components, 37 jewels. It comes in at a thickness of 3.9 millimeters, a width of 27.4 millimeters, and it has a power reserve of 45 hours. The dial detail on this watch and the depth that you get, the kind of gold and blue contrast is just absolutely stunning. Now, interestingly, when you look back through the brand's archives, there's actually one model in particular that has remarkable similarity to this new model, and that is the number 5 pocket watch. And this was delivered in 1794. Now, this specific watch actually pays homage to that original design within that pocket watch. And you can really see, it's quite remarkable, you can really see the similarities. By the way, it's also worth saying that the dial that you see here is made entirely from gold. And the entire face of the watch is actually made using a hand-applied technique. Now, of course, because of the fact that this is a limited edition, and it's also a highly sought-after brand that doesn't make that many watches, this is, I mean, it's quite expensive. It comes in at £65,900. By the way, the watch that's coming up at the end, I am absolutely obsessed. And it was partially because of Taylor Swift. You'd never guess it. Zenith. Zenith are an interesting brand. They've been doing a load of watches for their 160th anniversary. Some of them I think are really, really cool. Others I'm maybe not as big a fan of. But this one, no matter what side of the fence you are, you can't deny it's actually quite cool. This is the brand new Zenith Defy Skyline Tourbillon. This watch comes in at 41 millimeters in diameter. It comes in full 18 karat rose gold, and it has a satin brushed and polished finish. It has a 12-sided bezel screw-in crown with the Zenith Star logo and a sapphire crystal front and back. It's also water resistant to 100 meters. With that said, with a watch that's full 18 karat gold, I highly doubt you'd be taking it in the water. The dial on this watch is actually really interesting, and it'll probably be quite divisive. Some people will love it, some people will hate it, but I think it is quite cool, to be honest. This dial is a brick red sunray dial inspired by Zenith's historic Le Local manufacturer. It has engraved 4-pointed stars radiating from the interior from the heart of the watch, which is the tourbillon. It has rose gold facets, hour markers, and also hands with super luminova. And then we get to the movement, and I feel like Zenith movements are always pretty killer, if I'm totally honest. I've never come across, I can't remember a time that I've come across a Zenith movement and I've not liked it. They always do. No, sometimes the designs can be questionable, but the movements, So the movement in this watch is the Zenith El Primero 3630. This is fully in-house and it's fully automatic. It beats at 36,000 VPH, has 50 hours of power reserve. It has a tourbillon cage shaped as Zenith's double Z star, and it has one rotation every 60 seconds. It has a rose gold open-worked oscillating weight and a 3D laser engraved Côtes de Genève motif radiating from the tourbillon. Now this watch does come with either the full bracelet, the full gold bracelet, or you can slot it onto this kind of like burgundy, burnt orange looking rubber strap. Personally, if I had, how much is this? 84,100 pounds, I'd be putting it on the burnt orange kind of rubbery strap. I do think that looks really, really cool, if I'm perfectly honest. I love tourbillons. I love seeing into the beating heart of the watch, the kind of open face to a watch. I'm obsessed with that style. And I do think this is a really, really cool watch. I do, genuinely. Okay, so the next new watch is one that I spotted from Grand Seiko, and it's this. This is the brand new Spring Drive UFA. And this is a limited edition that captures the beauty of a frost-covered dawn with its violet-colored dial. I do love how Grand Seiko always seem to have a story around their dials. I mean, a lot of them are quite samey. It's ice, it's mist, it's snow, but I like the stories. This watch is actually being called the Violet Dawn. That's kind of the nickname that us in the watch community have given this. But let's dive into the detail, and let's dive into what UFA actually means. This watch comes in at 37 millimeters in diameter, 44.3 millimeters lug to lug, and it has a thickness of 11.4 millimeters. It has box-shaped sapphire crystal glass, which gives this watch more of a vintage hue. Actually, I do like that Grand Seiko still keep that going. Anyway, let's get back to it. It comes in full ever brilliant steel, but it does have an open case back with sapphire crystal glass. Now, the movement in this watch is where the Spring Drive UFA comes in. That kind of small terminology that not many people understand what it means yet, because it is very new. But let me just describe it really quickly. So UFA actually stands for ultra fine accuracy. And essentially the caliber 9RB2 has more accuracy. The Spring Drive caliber 9RB2 actually has an accuracy of plus to minus 20 seconds a year. And that translates across to approximately plus to minus 3 seconds per month. Plus to minus 20 seconds a year. That is insane. It also has 72 hours of power. It, of course, is a spring drive movement. So essentially, a spring drive movement takes the best of quartz and the best of automatic and kind of splices it together. But the fact that this movement is that accurate sets the benchmark for every single other brand. Literally, it's unbelievable. And I know that the dial, we'll move on to the dial in a second because it's stunning. But that, for a watch guy, is so impressive. The new dial on this watch is in a beautiful purple and has a brilliant gradient from more light purple in the middle to darker on the outside. Now, depending on the way that this watch is photographed, it looks like an entirely different watch. The dials that Grand Seiko do, the detail are to die for. But one thing that does upset me, and I get frustrated sometimes. I understand why brands do it, but it does frustrate me sometimes. There's only 1,300 of these pieces existing in the world today, and it's a limited edition. And I don't know why they just haven't made this a production model, because it's so stunning. And sometimes what frustrates me about Grand Seiko is they bring out a limited edition and then they'll bring out a normal edition, just something that's constantly in production, that's extremely similar to the limited edition. They've done it before, and I don't want them to do that again. If they're going to do a limited edition, stick to it and keep it as limited as you can. This watch comes in at £9,500. Omega. They were going to get talked about at some point. So Omega released actually 4 new Speedmasters. 3 of them are Dark Side of the Moon, and 1 of them is Grey Side of the Moon. Let's talk about the Dark Side of the Moon ones first, and then we'll talk about the Grey Side of the Moon. And then we'll talk about my personal favorite, because I do have one. So firstly, we have this. This is the Omega Speedmaster Dark Side of the Moon 9900 Auto. This model has an all-black case and bezel with white markings and indices. It uses the Omega Coaxial Master Chronometer 9900, and this model is actually automatically wound and has 60 hours of power reserve. It's METAS certified and has the date window at the 6 o'clock mark, alongside the 2-register layout that has the hours and minutes for the chronograph at 3 o'clock. It comes in at 44.25 millimeters in diameter, 15.09 millimeters thick, and it has a lug-to-lug of 50 millimeters. It's water resistant to 50 meters, and you can choose from 2 straps. You have a textile or a rubber. And then we have this. This is the Omega Speedmaster Black. Now this model, and I'll put the model numbers up here, is essentially an all-black iteration of the standard model, measuring 44.25 millimeters in diameter, 15.09 millimeters in thickness, and 50 millimeters lug to lug. These models also use the same coaxial master chronometer caliber 9900 as the previous version. And then we get to this. This is the Omega Speedmaster Black Red, and this is fully manual wound. This model has the same specs as you would expect. I mean, it comes in at 44.25 millimeters in diameter, 15.09 millimeters in thickness, and 50 millimeters lug to lug. This model uses the brand's coaxial master chronometer caliber 9908, which is slightly different, and it's manually wound. And it's important to say that this model actually doesn't feature a date display. The caliber 9908 is METAS certified and has 60 hours of power. And that is your 3 new Dark Side of the Moon models. But within the 3 Dark Side of the Moon models that they released, technically there's more if you change the strap, but you know, if this the head of the watch, there's 3. They did release something that I personally found even more gorgeous. They released this. This is the brand new Omega Speedmaster Grey Side of the Moon, and it has the caliber 3869. Interestingly, Omega actually released the Grey Side of the Moon Speedmaster back in 2014, and that was only 1 year after they debuted the Dark Side of the Moon. This new version, however, replaces the former automatic caliber 9300 with the hand-wound caliber 3869. Grey ceramic can be found on the case pushers and the crown, as well as the clasp. And also, the Grey Side of the Moon has slightly different specs to the Dark Side of the Moon, one thing in particular being it's that little bit thinner. The Grey Side of the Moon comes in at 44.25 millimeters in diameter, 12.97 millimeters in thickness, and it comes in at 50 millimeters lug to lug. It has the new Omega caliber 3869, and this is a grey edition, so you can actually see some pretty incredible flares on the back when looking into the movement, and this has 50 hours of power, is manual winding, and is METAS certified. The Grey Side of the Moon actually has kind of a skeletonized dial with applied luminous hour markers and white markings for the regular minutes and elapsed seconds. The 30 seconds and the 12-hour chronograph totalizers are solid, while the register for the running seconds is skeletonized. Due to the kind of partially skeletonized nature to this, there's just so much depth on the face of this watch. And in fact, I've actually been looking at my Omega Speedmaster, this is the Apollo 13, and comparing it to a lot of this. And I do think that that dial has more depth than this does. With that said, this model does come in at £13,800. £800. The next watch on the list is actually a watch that I've spoken about before. I did a, new Longines watches update and I mentioned this watch, but I think I'm going to mention it again because I think it is quite significant and it's pretty special. This is the brand new Longines Ultrachron Classic. Now, that does come in two different sizes. You have a 40mm variant or a 37mm variant. Let's just talk about the 40 to make things easy. The 40mm variant has a lug-to-lug of 47.2mm, a case thickness of 10.95mm. It's water resistant to 50 meters, comes in full stainless steel, and it does have the caliber L836 fully automatic movement. And this beats at a frequency of 36,000 VPH and has 52 hours of power. One of the reasons that I think this watch is interesting, aside from the history, and we have covered the history in another video, every other iteration of the Ultrachron that Longines have been releasing, I feel they've been quite watch nerd centric. Watch guys will like them, but guys that aren't necessarily into the watch industry may not understand them. Whereas I feel like this is the first watch that they've released, the Ultrachron wise that is, that kind of has wide market appeal. And I've actually seen a lot of people messaging me that aren't necessarily in the watch industry that are interested in this Ultrachron. Because it's simple, it strips everything back comparatively to the other models like the carbon model. It was quite a lot to handle. Now, this watch does come in at £3,250, so it's by no ways cheap, but for the history you get, for what this watch represents in time, and also for the design of it, I think it's quite cool. Tag Heuer. Now, Tag Heuer have actually had a bunch of new releases. Let's just talk about a couple of them really, really quickly. So they released this. This is the Tag Heuer Carrera Chrono Sprint X Porsche 911, and it's paying homage to 1964. This comes in at 42mm, 18 karat, 5N solid rose gold, and it does have that kind of beautiful glass box design. It is pretty stunning, and the price. The price comes in at £21,500. Next up, we have this. This is the Tag Heuer Carrera Chronograph Tourbillon Extreme Sport F1 75th anniversary, and it is a limited edition. To be fair, I can actually see like an F1 driver wearing that. It's nice. And then we have these two new Extreme Sport versions. So one of them comes in full gold and titanium, and the other comes in just titanium. Let's talk about the titanium one, because I think that this is actually really cool, and I do really like this. Now, these twin time models come in at 44mm in diameter with 16.7mm in thickness, which is definitely noticeable due to the recessed case flank with the kind of black PVD coating. So it is definitely not for the faint-hearted. This watch is a thick boy. It's in full grade 2 titanium. You can definitely see that from the kind of more dark aesthetic of this watch. It is partially skeletonized and has the caliber TH20-02 movement. And this is an evolution of the in-house GMT chronograph caliber, and it offers 80 hours of power reserve. I do like the color combination here. Yeah, I think that to me personally, it's just that little bit busy. There is a lot going on in this watch, but I do like the fact that Tag are kind of honing in on their movements. They're honing in on their craft. For a long time, I feel like Tag was known as more of a style brand, and that really frustrated me. More of a fashion brand, but I don't think they are. I think they are legitimate watchmakers, and I think they are making really cool things. And this is just, they know they're not going to sell that many of these because they are quite divisive in nature. But what Tag are doing here is they're showing you guys, they're showing me and the watch community what they can do. The teal version in grade 2 titanium comes in at £7,900. And now we move to Seiko. We've got 3 new Seikos in particular, one yellow, one red, and one blue. I mean, bezel-wise, that is. And these actually pay homage to the fan favorite in the 1980s, which was once known as the Seiko Roticol. These new models come in at 37mm in diameter, 43.5mm lug-to-lug, and 10.6mm in thickness. It has the caliber A824, which is a full quartz movement. Of course, it is battery operated, and it is a digital watch coming in stainless steel. These watches come in at $550 US, and actually, I think these watches are really cool. I think they're pretty trendy. But I suppose, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Would you go for something like this when it comes to digital watches, or would you go for a Casio? Which one would you go for? Moving on to Cartier, and Cartier is an interesting one because remember how Taylor Swift got engaged? By the way, any man looking at the ring that she got engaged with is quivering in his boots right now, including myself. But her husband, or fiance now, actually had on a Cartier Santos. And since that proposal, because it was so viral, apparently Cartier Santos sales went through the roof. And then since that, Cartier have released these. This is the brand new Cartier Santos in titanium. And also they released a steel reference, but let's just focus on titanium. The dial color of the titanium model comes in anthracite. These models come in at 39.8 millimeters in diameter, 9.38 millimeters in thickness. They're water resistant to 100 meters and have the movement Cartier 1847 MC. This is 25.6 millimeters in diameter, 3.8 millimeters in thickness, and 42 hours of power. And actually looking at this watch, I think this is probably my favorite watch throughout this entire video of new watches. I really, really do. But what is your favorite new watch within this video? What is your favorite new watch that's come out recently? Please let me know in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please hit that subscribe button or follow our Instagram at Chisholm Hunter Watches or the podcast, the Into the Mind podcast. And I'll see you guys real soon.